flyweight division, female flyweight division, there are two young contenders that just seem to be the evolution of fighting. Erin Blanchfield and Manon Fior. Look, they fight this weekend from Atlantic City, and both of them are next level. We watched Manon Fior beat Rose Namajunas recently. We watched Erin Blanchfield beat, what was her name? Tyler Santos, sorry. She beat her. They're both next level. They're both unbelievably skilled. What do you make of this fight, Chael?
Okay. As a coach, Daniel, I can do a very good job when a young athlete will come to me and ask me for a strategy. I can't guarantee that it'll work, but I can guarantee that with their skills versus their opponent, it would be best if, and then fill in the blank from there. I would have a very hard time telling you how to beat Blanchfield. I just don't see a lot of weaknesses in her game. I'd have a very hard time telling you, well, get it on the ground, you're going to have an advantage, or push her up against the fence, or make sure you step outside or switch to southpaw, kick more than you do punch. It's one of those things where Blanchfield for me is so incredibly difficult to beat. I even find that her strength is her lack of weakness. If you ask me what is Blanchfield good at, I wouldn't be able to look at one of her skill sets from her jiu-jitsu to her wrestling to her boxing that is more significant than something else. And I coached an athlete like this one time. His name is Kelvin Gastelum. And I coached him on the set of The Ultimate Fighter. He was the youngest contestant to ever go through that process. He was the last pick. Jones and I, neither one of us picked him. It was just my turn, and he comes walking over. And I only share that with you because I don't know what Kelvin was good at. And I would tell him that. I'd say, Kelvin, I don't know what your big strength is. And I finally, on the very last day, I gave him that speech 4 or 5 times, and I meant it as a compliment. But after I gave it on our very last day of filming, Luke Barnett comes up to me and says, you want to know what Kelvin's good at? And Kelvin had qualified for the finals. He's going to take on Uriah Hall. And I said, yeah, I do want to know. What's he good at? And Luke says, he's good at fighting. And that's the same thing with Erin. She's just good at fighting. I don't predict her to go make an Olympic team in boxing or wrestling. I don't predict her to go into Abu Dhabi and come away with a medal. But when you combine it all, she's good at fighting, partner.
Yeah, she's really good. And, you know, with Manon Fior, we have seen her come into the UFC and look unbelievably impressive. She's a fantastic striker. She's insanely intense. And she has a viciousness about her when she's inside the octagon, where you feel like Manon wants to really hurt her opponents as she's trying to get a victory. But when you look at Erin Blanchfield, Chael, it's complete, well-rounded skills. And, you know, Ryan Clark and I used to do the show, and we were talking about the bantamweight division when Raquel Pennington became the champion. But, Chael, when they were getting ready to announce that fight with Raquel Pennington as the woman fighting for the belt, everyone, when Erin Blanchfield said, I'll do it, everyone said, okay, had no problem with it. And I think that might be the greatest compliment you can give a young fighter, because they knew that she was so good, Chael, that even if she was to fight for the belt up 10 pounds, undersized, she would have an opportunity to become the champion. That is Erin Blanchfield all rolled up and summed up as the idea of who she is as a fighter. She can do it all. She's young, she's hungry, she's durable, she's driven. But this weekend, she is faced with the toughest challenge that she has ever seen in her career. Because I do believe that Manon Fior has a lot of ability and a lot of talents that could cause her issues. Where, though, when she is in that fight, does Erin Blanchfield start to question whether or not she is as good as we all think she is, or does she not? Because against Tyler Santos, when she was behind a little bit, she went back to the smooth Chael, she reset, and she got it done over the next 10 minutes to win a decision. But it's a 25-minute fight. It's a long time. Who does that benefit?
Daniel, when I was an aspiring fighter, I was back in college, but of all the things that I ever heard or saw that made me dream and wish that I could be part of it, Olympic wrestling champion, the late Jeff Blatnick used to be an announcer for the UFC,
Yes.
and this was some of the most chilling words that I had ever heard. I can even recreate it and still get the goosebumps when he was talking about Vitor Belfort. And Vitor Belfort, right before he walked out, Jeff Blatnick used to always tell you what the strengths and weaknesses were. And for Vitor, he said, and I quote, "No known weaknesses." And I remember where I was when I heard and felt that. Not to mention, Vitor is getting ready to take on my idol, Randy Couture, And here we've got the announcer that's seen every fight, and he just said the young phenom had no known weaknesses. I tell you that because for right now, that's where we're at with Blanchfield. Like, we don't know that it's better to have her on her feet or use your hands or grind her up. And at times in this sport, we pass it back and forth. I can clearly remember when being well-rounded was the most important thing that you could do. But then 2009 came along, and we had a specialist named Damian Maia that reminded us all, if you're overwhelmingly good in one area, that can also take you to the top. And I just say this, I know it sounds as though I'm predicting Blanchfield. You haven't asked me for a prediction, and I'm not going that far. I'm just talking about as an overall athlete and somebody that has the respect of her fellow competitors. Blanchfield is a real good place to start looking for a future top contender.
Absolutely. And, she and Manon Fior headlined the card this weekend, but that's not all we have. Look, Vicente Luque, who is a very fun athlete, tremendous striker, trains out of Kill Cliff, can do everything, takes on Joaquin Buckley. Buckley, at times, has shown flashes of brilliance, right? Obviously, we all know the leg caught, spinning back kick to get the knockout. But there have been many other instances where Joaquin Buckley has proven to be one of the better fighters in the world. But when you break this one down, Chael, you see two guys that are tremendous. But for me, it would seem as though Joaquin Buckley holds a power advantage. But I don't know that technically he is as sound as Vicente Luque. But what it does equal is a barn burner to hug. It feels like this one is going to blow the roof off Atlantic City.
There's never a time with Buckley when you can exhale. And you and I know this at wrestlers, but there gets to be a point in the match where you no longer have to beat the opponent. You just got to beat the clock. Stay in there, run out the time. This one is a foregone conclusion. You're never going to feel that with Buckley. And if you do, you're making a mistake. And I want to tell you something else about Luque. You go back and you look at his record and see how many submissions he has and who he has those against of the night bonuses. I mean, this guy was a perennial top contender for a meaningful amount of time, but he is in that very dangerous spot of his career where there is no room for mistake. And I just want to share that because he's done everything right. He signed up for the big opportunities. Some went his way, a couple didn't, but it's one of those real pivotal moments that a win is going to sustain him, but a win for Buckley is really going to be a career changer.
It could be, right? But what's his ceiling, Chael? What's Buckley's ceiling? Because we have seen him time and time again get opportunities, and he has stumbled, if I'm putting it lightly, in those moments. So what do you think his ceiling is? And right now, when you go into this fight this weekend, it's important for both. We both know that it's a difficult situation for Vicente because it could be over, right? When you lose to Gilbert Burns and you lose to Hamzat, or you lose to Shavkat, or you lose to those types of guys, Leon Edwards, nobody really bats an eyelid. But when you start losing to the guys at the back of the top 10 and 15, now we start looking at Vicente Luque going, well, is it over for him? So he's in a dangerous spot. Who's it more important for? Because all Buckley really has to gain is a ranking, right? Vicente Luque, this could seem like the start of the end if you don't get it done.
Well, I see it that same way. Like Luque's best days and having that spotlight, we're definitely there. And you run into that real dangerous time where do people still want to see me? Like, let me just give you a great example. Whose stock is going to go up the most? If Luque wins, where could we see him going next? I think that's going to take you a little bit of time to answer. And I think we'd like to hear from Luque. Does he have a call out he would like to do? Does he have something personal we don't know about? Meanwhile, I can answer real easy for Buckley. This is a feature guy that's got highlight reel knockouts. If he gets a win, he grabs a microphone, he calls out Michael Venom Page. They will make that fight that night, and you and I are going to co-sign it come Monday when we do our next show, just for example. But they need to be ready for that. And sometimes I don't see guys ready for that. If you're not ready for a call-out, what it tells me, accurately or not, what it tells me is the viewer, you didn't think you were going to win. That's what it tells me. When you don't know who you're going to have, or you give an answer like, I don't care. I don't care is supposed to mean I'm so brave I'll take on anybody. But it's not what you said. You said that you don't care. So if you don't care about your career, how can I care? And I only bring that to you because Buckley, with his excitement and with those knockouts, the right call out, the right name, for example, the one I just gave you, MVP, that's going to make some waves, and that's going to secure your spot towards the top of a card.
Oh, I just want whoever the UFC gives me. I'm like, guys, please. Hey, Chael, when I walk in there and I say, well, who do you want to fight next? Whatever the UFC decides. I'm like, I don't even want to be associated with this. It's tiring. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, Zach, can I put the microphone down and go back to my seat? Because I don't want to be associated with this nonsense. Make the most of your moment, fighters. Don't sit up there, whatever the UFC decides, I'm all for it. Humble gets you no ratings. Humble makes people not care. You better make a statement when you have the opportunity. So Chris Weidman fights Bruno Silva this weekend. He's back. Weidman has also stated that this might be it for him, but he said he feels better than ever, so he may continue. But what do we make of Chris Weidman? We still know that he's insanely tough because Brad Tavares beat up his legs. We also know that leg injury he had a little more long-term damage on him mentally than he expected. But we also know that he still aspires to be one of the best fighters in the world. Who's Chris Weidman today, Chael?
Chris Weidman is in a very interesting position for me. I mean, listen, Chris Weidman was an All-American in college. He wanted to be national champion. He didn't get there, so he continued his wrestling career. He went up to the Olympic Training Center. He wanted to make an Olympic team. He ends up making what's known as the national team. He was the number 3 guy in the country, so he went into mixed martial arts. And the reason I tell the story that way is this was a guy that was always hungry. He always wanted a little bit more. And some of those misses, and it might sound great to be an All-American, but it hurt Chris Weidman. He wanted to be the champion. And it might sound great to be on the national team, but it hurt Chris Weidman and his family. They wanted to be the Olympian. And it was always that coming up just a little bit short that really propelled him all the way to world championships against Anderson Silva, to where he's the defendant of the belt. One of the great fights ever, and it's never been given credit, but it was Weidman versus Luke Rockhold. That is one of the great 185-pound fights I have ever seen. I say this because Weidman does remain hungry and he remains resilient. And the term fighter is a word that's been corrupted over my lifetime. It's now about who can punch and kick better than the other person, but it used to mean who can get up when it's hard, who can get up when it's easier and feels better to stay sitting down. And Chris Weidman's a true fighter. I wish him the best, but Daniel, I do also wish this to be his last fight. Win, lose, or draw, at some point, everybody makes their last run. I hope and I think that this is it for Weidman.
Weidman made his debut in Atlantic City, so it has all the makings of the right place at the right time. But I actually spoke to Chris this morning, and we did an interview, and I asked him about it, and I go, you seem very sure that you were ready to be done. He said, you know what? I thought I was, but I've never felt better. And Chael, I think that's the danger, right? That's always the danger in going through a training camp and getting to fight week. Because during the camp, the whole time, you're thinking to yourself, man, I just want to get here, get this done, and be done with this. But then the week you get to fight week, Monday's kind of an off day, Tuesday's kind of an off day. For the first time in months, you get time to rest and recover. You're not in the gym constantly. You're not going at 110%. So you almost like block it out of your mind, because by Saturday, you feel like a whole new person. Chris Weidman feels brand new right now, but I don't know how long it can go. We all fall victim to it, Chael. I fought at 41. I knew I should have been done, but I kept on fighting because it's hard to get rid of the feeling that you get when you make that walk. Chris Weidman has to recognize at some point, I don't know if I want to do this no more. But he said he feels better than ever. But he also said that afterward he would love to box. I think part of the reason he may need to walk away, Chael, is because of the leg injury. Because now everybody's going to target it. And Bruno Silva would do the same thing this weekend. He has got to find a way to put that in the back of his mind and not limit himself inside the octagon, because for as good as he was against Tavares in terms of his durability, his toughness, he told me that when Tavares kicked him, he was so worried about the back leg, the injured one, that Tavares broke the other leg when they were fighting. And he said, so he was fighting him with no legs inside the octagon, which speaks to his toughness. When you have those injuries, Chael, everybody's targeting it. I don't care who you are. They're all targeting that injury.
Yeah, well, it's not as though the UFC's done him any favors, right? I mean, Chris Weidman has never had a light match or an easier match. And by the way, when you think about Chris, it's very hard to know what category to put him into. Let's play a quick game. But if I was to say to you, Israel Adesanya, you'd go, well, Chael, that's one of the great fighters. I say, well, do you think he could be world champion again? And you'd say, well, of course I think he could be world champion. And if I asked you about Chris Weidman, you'd probably say, no, he can't be champion again. But then if I said, well, let me tell you this, because Chris Weidman's going to fight Israel Adesanya, are you positive Izzy's going to win? And all of a sudden you pull back and go, no, I'm not. No, the All-American does have a way to go. He is competitive with anybody. I could actually see ways that he could win, right? I mean, it's one of those things. So when you've had your best days, when you've reached the spotlight, when the Hall of Fame is for sure in your future, what are you fighting for? What is the point? And I can answer that question, by the way. Chris Weidman's right now is to get up and make sure that leg injury didn't beat him. He knows his own son is watching him. He knows there's young athletes that are watching him. He's trying to inspire and impress them all. My only message, DC, he's already done it. Chris Weidman has already achieved what it is he's chasing. He already is an inspiration. He already is a champion. He already has set a great example. And I just want to make sure that's out there because somewhere in this universe, that message has not gotten through to Chris. He sees himself differently. And frankly, he's not giving himself quite enough credit.